So hi everyone. Like Joan said, I'm Guðmundur Hafsteinsson, and today I'm going to talk about how technology is evolving with respect to how we use it and how the interface is getting better. Before I dive in, I mean, Joan talked about my background, but I briefly want to sort of give a little bit of like why am I here and why should you listen to me. So these are some examples of products that I worked on. I was head of product for Siri and then at Apple as well, so I launched that product. I worked on voice search previously to that at Google, and in maps on mobile device. So I've been dabbling in this space for quite some time now, going back and forth. And today I lead the product development for Google Assistant. And I'm going to give a bunch of demos and show the Google Assistant, but this is not a Google-specific trend that I'm talking about. It's actually a thing that's happening industry-wide, and there's a big shift happening in technology, and I'll explain some of these things. So even if I'm giving the examples through the Google Assistant, because that's the product I work on, think of this as a more broader thing that's actually happening, and I'll explain exactly how that ties into how people use technology on a daily basis. And so we'll do some demos, have some fun. It's about the future. I'll show you a glimpse of what I think the future is going to look like in some sense. But before we go there, I want to talk about the past a little bit. And so think about technology 10, 20, 30 years ago, and I want to really focus on the computer. And the computer is sort of more of a broader term to think about how people use technology, how we have been using technology. And this is the thing. I don't know how many of you actually recognize things. These things used to be big, big screens, big boxes. And you notice it has a keyboard and a mouse. And really, when technology came along, we built these things that are very complicated, they're hard to use, and we required people to learn how to use them. So you would have to know how a mouse worked. When you used the keyboard, you'd have to type things and so on. The promise was always, these things are going to be fun. So this is an ad from the 80s for a computer, a home computer. And you see the family's all excited and fun, and they're having a lot of quality family time playing with this thing. But in reality, actually what happened was we gave them this. So I don't know how many of you actually recognize VI and Vim. Seriously complicated product. And so for people who like technology, this is exciting. I got all the power, I got all these mappings to these keys, and I can actually kind of play around with it. And sure, this is a power user thing, so you can say, well, that's a special case. But we can even go to people's homes. And I don't know how many of you actually remember this, but every home, many years ago, used to have a tape recorder, a VHS device, VCR, with a blinking clock. And the clock was always blinking because nobody knew how to set it. So I think we failed as an industry in some sense to bring technology closer to how we use it. And you might laugh at this and say, well, that's years ago. We've learned our thing right now. Maybe. This is my microwave oven. I have no idea how to use it. It's way too complicated. There are all these buttons. It's funny because this actually has labels on it. My friend has a white microwave oven that has just like these hieroglyphic pictures, and I don't know what those mean either. So I think the challenge is we've forced people to learn how to use technology. There are all these big manuals, and as a result, people aren't getting out of technology what they could be otherwise. And so, fortunately, there is a broader trend happening right now where we're thinking about how do we bring the interface to us? How do we bring technology to us as opposed to the other way around? And so that gets into the second chapter of this story. I call it mobility. It's really about the mobile device and what the mobile device has helped us achieve. And so it really happened back in 2007. I'm sure you all saw this presentation. I was in the auditorium watching this thing. This is one of the biggest moments in tech for many, many years. And maybe we didn't realize back then, and maybe we don't think about that as one pivotal moment, but the launch of the iPhone and the subsequent mobile devices that came along with it. I mean, obviously, tremendous change in terms of people having access to technology, everyone having their own device. I'm sure everyone in this audience has one mobile phone, if not more. But it also, the interesting thing about having a mobile device, it forced us to think about how we use these things. You don't have a keyboard, or it's a limited keyboard. You don't have a mouse. How do you actually then overcome the limitations by creating a better interface? And so this caused, obviously, a huge trend. Everyone has their own device. You can argue whether this is good or bad. They're all looking at their mobile devices, they're not talking, so, well, that's another discussion. But everyone has their own thing, and in particular, what was sort of the initial thing, the thrust that came out of it was the touch interface. And so now you have a mobile device, and you can use your finger to manipulate and order things and do things. That is a phenomenal shift from having a keyboard and a mouse to this thing, because now you actually don't have to learn how to use it. Everyone knows how to use it. My daughter, when she was less than 1 year old, she could barely walk, but she could, well, she could use this. She could mostly delete apps from my phone, but she could use this without, and like, nobody taught her, because it's a very natural thing. And she would walk up to TVs and try to move things around with the finger, because that's such a natural thing. And all these apps came along, and so it's been a tremendous sort of explosion of providing really, really interesting, powerful applications and services to users in a much better way than what the computer could ever achieve. And you can see it in the growth of mobile devices and the penetration and the number of them. It is a phenomenal shift in how people use technology. But it's not just the touch interface. These things actually have more than that. They have cameras, they have built-in location sensing, they have a microphone. So now we start thinking, well, that's interesting. You don't have to use a mouse and a keyboard. You can even go beyond touching, and you can actually think about how do you enable what I would consider the most natural interface of all, which is the conversation. And a conversation is, I mean, it's predominantly voice, but it's also this back and forth. How can I interact with my technology without having to learn, because we all know how to handle conversations. That's something we've learned and something we do with each other. Why can't technology do that? So for example, why can't I say, okay, Google, can I be a ninja?
On the website wikihow.com, they say your first responsibility is to learn and practice ninjutsu in secrecy and privately. Never publicize that you are a ninja.
So in this case, very useful information, by the way, if you want to be a ninja. This is me asking Google a question, and then Google went out to the web and found this answer. So we actually didn't create this answer. We found it on the web. So there's a website about how to become a ninja that explains in way more detail how to do this. Is the short version of it. If you're interested, you can probably look it up and find out more. I'm sure a lot of you are. And so you have this ability now to talk to these devices, and it opens up a whole dimension of what kind of functionality people can have access to. One is the ability to just talk, but it also can be very personal, and actually it kind of begs to be very personal, because when we have a conversation, we're used to things being very personal. And so for example, when I look for photos of Emma, I mean, there are a bunch of Emma out there on the web, Emma Thompson and Watson, but when I say, hey Google, show me photos of Emma,
here's what I found in your Google Photos.
I'm looking for photos of my daughter, Emma. And by being personal through the conversation, we can now offer you that ability to say, look, I want that information, and we know that this is exactly what you want. Tremendously powerful. It's not just photos, it's all kinds of things. So think about the possibilities. If it can access your reservations, it can look at your calendar, it plays your music. This really is an interface that's very natural, and it's yours. So again, you don't have to think about a manual. You don't have to think about how to learn to do these things. Another example, I was traveling in Dublin recently. And you know, when you're traveling, you need to get back to your hotel, at least in my case. I always forget what the hotel name is and whatever. So usually I have to go to my email and have to look up the reservation. Okay, got the name, look it up on the web, get a map. If I could just get the answer right away.
It takes 19 minutes to walk to the Marker Hotel Dublin.
That's so much more powerful. I can just say, hey Google, how do I get back to my hotel? And it comes back with the answer. Again, the expressiveness of a conversation lends itself very naturally to the ability to do these things that are tremendously powerful of connecting all those things together, and without me having to really learn anything. So with that now, actually, these are all some of the demos I've been showing. I actually want to show you a live demo. And so bear with me, because these are actually live demos. So when we do that, things can go all kinds of things can go wrong, but hopefully will work. So this is you looking at my phone that I'm holding here. And I'm going to give you just a few examples of having a conversation with an assistant, with Google Assistant, and how that works. And I'll call out the things that are actually quite interesting. So I can say something like, what's a good restaurant around here?
I found a few places within 900 meters.
So the audio doesn't come through. Hopefully you can hear it from my phone. But it comes back with a bunch of suggestions. And these are all good suggestions. And I can scroll through them. I can tap and take a look at more information, reviews, and things like that. Let's say the first one looks nice, and I want to get more information about it. When does the first one close?
Berks and Mathis is open today from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Here are the hours for the rest of the week.
And very natural in terms of how I do this. I don't have to think about anyway how I phrase it and so on. And you'll even notice that I was able to say, when does the first one close? This was actually quite useful when I was in India recently and I was looking for restaurants, and there's no way I could pronounce any of the places I found. So it's very powerful that I could just say the first one, second one, and so on. I can continue and I can say, how do I get there?
The best way to get to Berks and Mathis by car is via Lake Ajargada, which will take about 5 minutes in moderate traffic.
Still learning how to pronounce Icelandic, but that's fine. And again, I could just say, how do I get there? And again, the point of this is, I mean, this is a technological masterpiece in terms of being able to do this, but the point is to bring it to the way that we talk. And me not having to think, well, can I say, how do I get there? Or how do I actually work with these things? So the whole thing is, how do you make technology so easy that I don't have to learn how to use it? And this is not easy to do, obviously, so we put a lot of work into I think the complexity of the system reflects itself in the simplicity of the user experience. Let me do one more example. What's fun to do around here?
Attractions in Reykjavik include Hallgrímskirkja, Harpa, Golden Circle, and others.
So let's pretend now for a minute that I'm a tourist. I'm not. But imagine I was, and I wanted to take a look at this church up there. It looks nice, interesting. I go for a walk. On my way there, I come across this thing by the ocean that looks kind of cool. It's like a sculpture, but I don't know what it is, and I don't actually want to learn more about it. And I did mention that conversation is more than through voice. You should be able to express yourself in multiple different ways. I mean, when I talk to my friends, when words don't work, I scribble on a napkin. And so why can't I do the same thing with technology? And so we've built in what's called Google Lens. It's the ability to, in addition to voice, I can now use my camera to interact with the assistant. So I can just switch to camera mode here. And imagine if I have to picture that, I'm not there yet, but imagine I saw this thing and I walk in, I can just say, what is this?
According to Wikipedia, Sun Voyager is a sculpture by John Gunnar Arneson, located next to the Sabrout Road in Reykjavik, Iceland.
And just keep in mind, this is not a fake demo. This is actually live, real stuff. Again, I travel a lot around the world. Whenever I see an interesting building or something, a sculpture, a landmark or whatever, I just tap on this. If I need to have text translated, I can use the camera, point at it, and it comes back with it. This is an amazingly powerful thing when you want to learn about something and you can't express it with words. Let's give you another example. Let's say I got to the church up on the hill, Hallgrímskirkja, and now I'm looking at it and I actually want to learn more about it. So I can do, how tall is it?
Hallgrímskirkja is 74 meters tall.
And you notice, first of all, I just pointed the camera at the church. But second of all, I could just say, how tall is it? And it knew that I was referring to the thing in the photo, just like a human being would. So we're bringing the interface closer to what we as individuals want it to be. So that's the demo. Let's switch back to the presentation. Get back to the presentation, please. If only I could just say, hey Google, switch to the presentation. There we go. Thank you. Now, for this next section, think about how the fact that I can talk to technology, it's pretty amazing. And technology now can speak my language, it can speak other languages. Wouldn't it be nice if we could use this technology to make it easy for people to communicate with each other? So for this section, I want to have Jóna to come back on stage, help me out. So I don't know if you heard about it, we have these headsets called Pixel Buds. And what we did with those is, they're just usual headsets, pretty good. They look like this. And what I can do is I can put them on, and they actually connect to the assistant. So now whenever I want to talk to the assistant, I can just tap and speak, and it will actually do the interaction for me. And now, and I've actually done this before in many places, but if I wanted to talk to Jonathan, he wants to talk Icelandic, I want to speak English. This is all make-believe because we both speak Icelandic, but let's pretend, let's keep pretending. So I run into Jonathan, I want to have a conversation. I can basically go to the assistant and say, help me speak Icelandic.
Sure, opening Google Translate.
And so Translate opens on my phone, and I can hand the phone to Jonathan. He can take it here, and then I can just go and say, hi, how are you?
Hæ, hvernig hefurðu það?
Ég hef það mjög gott.
I'm just fine.
This is a pretty exciting conference, isn't it?
Þetta frekar spennandi ráðstefna, það ekki?
Já, mjög svo.
Yes, very.
Well, I won't hold you much longer, but thank you for helping me show how technology can bring the world together.
Jæja, ég ætla ekki að halda þér lengur. Takk fyrir að hjálpa mér að sýna hvernig við getum komið heiminum saman með tækni.
Thank you, Jonathan. So you can see this technology has tremendous amount of breadth in terms of application. I actually used it. I used it recently in Spain, and Jon, he knew that I was going to hand him the phone and everything, so he wasn't surprised. But it's actually kind of fun to do this, and you walk to someone and say, hey, look, here's my phone, we want to talk to you, and they go, ooh. So we're getting used to this. This is new technology, so we're all learning how to actually use them in the best way. Now, this is all about the phone and how it helped, and the headset, how to use conversation technology while on the go. Actually, this is having a much broader impact. So this is obviously revolutionizing the phone, but if you think about other places, and in particular the home, there's a lot happening there. And this is a center kind of technology in terms of making the home technology easier to use and less in your way. And so this is a typical picture. When you think about IoT, Internet of Things, and all these things that are happening in your home, we say, well, there's all these smart things happening, and this is going to be smart, and smart dishwasher, smart kitchen, smart fridge, and so on and so forth. And then you take the phone, and the phone is going to be able to work with these things and make them much better, and so on. And in some sense, you kind of go, well, like, do I want that? I mean, yeah, I want these things to be smart and connect and everything. But am I going to be coming home to my family and constantly on my phone all the time? I mean, I have problems with my kids. They're always on the phone. I actually want them to use the phone less, but I want them to have access to technology. And so really, like, this is the scenario we all want. We look at the dinner table. I'm assuming it's a fun dinner party going on there. I don't know. But you'll notice the one thing that's absent from this photo is the phone. And being able to put your phone away when you get home and still have access to everything you need really makes life better. And so we've been working on how do we bring this into the home. And a couple of years ago, we launched this thing called Google Home, and it has the assistant built in. And so really, it's just a speaker, and you put it wherever you want. And then when you want to talk to it, you just talk to it, but it's not in the way. So I was having, you know about the lunar eclipse that was this week. There was a lot of discussion at my dinner table at my home. And the question came up like, whoa, there's this discussion about blue moon and red moon and blood moon and whatnot. And usually you would say, okay, well, let's find out. And everyone would pull out the phone. And when you pull your phone out, the conversation is dead. All your social interactions go away when you take the phone out. So we wanted to avoid that. And so in this case, I was having the conversation, and instead, I just said, hey, Google, what is a blood moon?
Blood moon, the phenomenon whereby the moon in total eclipse appears reddish in color as it is illuminated by sunlight filtered and refracted by the Earth's atmosphere.
So it brought the whole family into the conversation. The information came to us without stopping the conversation that we were having. We could continue, we could actually enhance the conversation. Now we could talk, whoa, whoa, well, that means that, and more questions came up. And so with this, we were able to just seamlessly have it all brought into the conversation, the information we wanted. Similarly, when I want to watch a video, I can just say, hey, Google, play Narcos on TV.
Playing Narcos from Netflix on living room television.
And it just goes off. It's magical. No remote control needed. And when I want to pause, I just say, hey, Google, pause, and it just works. Again, very easy to use. The one place we noticed that people use the home a lot is in the kitchen. So I now want to do I know I'm short on time. I want to do a quick demo, again, live demo of how people use Google Home in the kitchen. And for this one, I'm going to switch over here, and I have a little setup. And I have to put my stuff on. Of course, when I go to the kitchen, I need to have all the right gear set up. And I have a little mobile kitchen set up. And I have a Google Home. It's connected somehow to the microphone, and it's unmuted.
The mic's back on.
And so what we thought about, well, it's in the kitchen a lot, and people like to use it there. How do we enhance, how do we help people in the kitchen? Obviously, a lot of people are cooking. This is all crooked. And we wanted to make it easy for them. So now I can say something like, hey, Google, show me a good brownie recipe.
Okay, I've got a recipe called Classic Chewy Brownie from Taste. Does that sound good?
Yes.
Great, let's get started. Would you like to prepare the ingredients or skip to the instructions?
Skip to instructions.
There's 9 steps. I'll read them one by one. When you're ready to hear more, you can say, next step. First step, preheat oven to 180 degrees Celsius, 160 degrees Celsius fan force.
Already done with that, so that's good. Hey, Google, next step.
Second step, grease a 20 centimeters base measurement square cake pan in line with baking paper.
Mine is round, but that's okay, it's fine. Hey, Google, next step.
Place butter and chocolate in a heat-proof bowl over a saucepan of simmering water. Don't let the bowl touch the water.
Think about, now I'm having a conversation. I'm wondering, well, put the butter. How much butter? Hey, Google, how much butter?
125 grams unsalted butter, chopped.
Now, having lived in the US for such a long time, I'm actually kind of rusty on the metric system, so I might say something like, hey, Google, how much is that in ounces?
It's about 4.4 ounces of unsalted butter.
And because it knows the context, it keeps the conversation going, I can just go take the butter. By the way, I don't usually do measurements, so I just take the whole thing, put it in, and off we go. Now, I'm not going to bore you guys with the whole thing. It takes about 30 minutes, so I know. So let's just go to the last step. Hey, Google, go to the last step.
Okay, set aside to cool completely. This was the last step. Enjoy.
So this is something actually I did last night. So I do have cookies here. And I want to hand it out to you guys, and you can just let it pass it along. Some cookies for you guys, so here you go.
The mic is muted.
And so we've seen people, oops, let's take this off too. We've seen people use this a lot in the kitchen where they just, I mean, it's made me a better cook. It's helped me cook more. And I don't have to fumble with mobile devices or computers or anything like that because my hands are usually busy and maybe dirty and whatever. And it's very powerful. And in fact, this has been one of the many inspirations for a new kind of device that we're coming out. We announced at CES. It's called a smart display. It's basically the same concept as the Google Home, but in this case, in addition to a speaker, now you have a screen. So you might be cooking dinner, and one of the steps comes along and says, okay, now cut the pineapple. I don't know how many of you know how to cut a pineapple. Just hearing a description how to do it, it doesn't quite cut it. You actually want to see a video. So now you can say, oh, show me a video how to cut a pineapple. And it'll actually do that and go to YouTube, bring the video, and go back to the recipe. So we're trying to make that experience of using technology in your home without being in your way much, much better. Now, it's not all just practical things. We have a lot of fun with this too. And in fact, if you have the assistant on your device, whether it's a Google Home or a phone, you can have a pretty fun conversation with it. And my team, we usually kind of play around. Okay, what's the most fun thing? So I'm going to give you a few examples of things that I actually like about things you can ask the assistant. So, hey Google, what does a unicorn sound like?
Here's what a unicorn sounds like.
And that's an actual recording of a unicorn. We have a few in California. So if you ever visit, you can come and take a look at them. Hey Google, beatbox.
If you want to freestyle, my friend has you covered.
Now you should all stand up and dance, but whatever. And then finally, hey Google, self-destruct.
Self-destructing in 3, 2, 1. Actually, I think I'll stick around.
So anyway, so we have a lot of fun with this. You guys didn't stand up and run away. I'm surprised. And so the whole point of this is bringing all these services together in the places where it makes sense. And in fact, having technology sort of disappear in the background and come to you when you need it through a natural way. And you all know that this was something that was predicted way decades ago in Star Trek and other science fiction. I think the thing they missed, though, if you look at this screen, this shot from the shows, technology became much more in sort of present. And you see all these screens and everything. It's always like talking to a computer and so on. And in fact, all we're picturing like, whoa, in 50 years, we're going to live like this. It's going to be this space station-like thing, bunch of screens, a lot of technology. I actually think that this trend now is actually taking us the other way. Because we actually don't, like, it's not about technology. It's about what technology can do for us. And so making that interface more adapted to how we work and how we actually want to do things, I think the home of the future is going to be much more like this, where technology kind of fades in the background. Yeah, there's a TV over there, but otherwise, it's about people. It's about us. It's about how can we be in our homes, spend time together, quality time together, and when we need it, it's there for us, but otherwise gets out of the way. So that's it. That's what I think about when we're going to think about future and how we're going to use technology. Thank you so much. I had a lot of fun today.